My wife cheated with our business partner, stole $250, $0 from our joint account, and now she's claiming she owns half the house. Except I just found out she's been secretly planning to sell our family home of 20 years behind my back to fund her new life with our lawyer's help. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Lisa, turned out to be a complete liar and a thief. Honestly, I thought we had a good life, 2 kids, a decent house, and a business that I built from scratch. We fought, sure, but I always believed she was faithful. That was until I stumbled on something that shattered everything I thought I knew about her and about us. It started about a month ago. I noticed her acting a little off, more irritable than usual, snapping at me over small things, avoiding certain conversations. Nothing concrete, just a feeling in my gut that something was wrong. I brushed it off at first. Maybe stress from work, maybe the kids' school stuff. But then I started noticing her phone more often, hiding it when I came into the room, deleting texts, or changing her passcode. She'd go out to the store and come back with a strange look on her face. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I could feel the walls closing in. One night I stayed up late, working on some paperwork in the office. Out of boredom and honestly suspicion, I decided to check her phone when she went to bed. That's when I saw it, a series of texts with Mark, our business partner. The messages weren't just friendly. They were flirtatious, intimate, talking about meeting up for a real good time and planning secret getaways. My stomach dropped. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My wife, Lisa, was cheating with Mark, and clearly they'd been doing it for a while. What made it worse was the tone of the messages. She was bitchy, sarcastic, and dismissive of me in most of her texts, like she was already planning her escape route. She insisted she was just venting. That Mark was just a friend who'd been there for her during a rough patch. Yeah, right, I knew better. The way she talked about money, the way she dismissed my concerns, it all started to click. She'd been hiding something bigger, something that went way beyond just cheating. I started digging deeper. I pulled bank statements and found that over the past few months she'd been transferring money out of our joint account. $250, zero gone, just like that. I couldn't believe it. That kind of cash gone without my knowledge. When I confronted her about the money, she spun some story about investments and emergencies. But I knew she was lying. She'd been planning something, I was sure of it. And then there was the house. We've lived in that place for 20 years, our family home. I always thought it was ours, that we owned it outright. But I found out she's been secretly talking to a lawyer, trying to claim half the house, claiming she's entitled to it because she's equally invested. The thing is, I paid for that house myself, with my savings, and she's been trying to sell it behind my back to fund her new life with Mark and whoever else she's been screwing around with. I was furious. How could she betray me like this? How could she lie, cheat, steal, and then try to take everything I built? That's when I realized I had to do something. I couldn't just sit back and let her destroy everything. I needed a plan. I started gathering evidence, texts, bank statements, recordings. I wanted her to know I wasn't going down without a fight. I was angry, betrayed, and hurt, but I also knew I had to be smart about this. I didn't want to ruin everything, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it either. The first confrontation was brutal. I brought her into the living room, showed her the messages, the bank transfers, the legal papers I'd found. She denied everything at first, said I was jealous, paranoid, that I was overreacting. But I had enough. I told her I knew about her cheating, about the money, about the house. Her face twisted into this bitchy sneer, and she started lying even more, saying I was just imagining things, that Mark was just a business friend, that I was just insecure. I could see her trying to spin her web of lies, but I wasn't buying it. The emotional impact hit me hard. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I trusted her for so long, believed in our marriage, our family, and now I was faced with this betrayal. I felt anger, heartbreak, and a deep sense of loss. I'd built a life with her, and now I was realizing it was all a lie. I was angry at her, but also at myself for not seeing the signs sooner. I kept asking myself how she could do this, how she could be so selfish, so manipulative. But I also knew I couldn't let her walk all over me. I had to decide what to do next. Do I fight for the marriage? Do I walk away? Do I take her to court? The options swirled in my mind, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let her take everything I've worked for. That's when I started planning my next move, carefully and quietly. I knew she'd try to spin her story, try to turn things around, but I was ready. I had to be. I couldn't let her get away with this. And that's where I am now, trying to figure out how to stop her from selling the house, how to get back what she stole, and how to protect my kids from the fallout. I never thought I'd be in this position, but here I am. Betrayed, hurt, and angry, but still standing. I just wish I'd seen the signs earlier. If anyone out there thinks their wife might be cheating or hiding something, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the little red flags. Because once it's all out in the open, your life might never be the same. After I gathered all the evidence, those damning texts, the bank statements, and the legal documents, I felt like I was carrying a weight I couldn't put down. The shock was still fresh, but now it was mixed with a cold, simmering rage. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time, with everything laid out on the table. I wanted her to see that I wasn't some naive fool who didn't notice the cracks in our marriage. I was done being played. That evening I called her into the living room. She looked nervous, probably sensing that I knew more than I was letting on. I laid everything out, showed her the screenshots of her conversations with Mark, the transfer receipts, the legal notices I'd found on the house. Her face twisted into that same bitchy sneer she always wore when she was trying to manipulate someone. She denied everything at first, said I was paranoid, that Mark was just a business friend, and that the money was for some emergency investment. She even tried to turn it around, accusing me of being controlling and insecure. I was past caring about her lies. I told her I knew about her affair, about the money she stole, and about her plans to sell the house behind my back. Her reaction was a mix of anger and outrage. She yelled, called me paranoid, accused me of spying on her, and then started crying fake tears, trying to make me feel guilty. I wasn't buying it. I told her I'd had enough of her bullshit and I was ready to take charge of the situation. I knew I had to act fast. The house was her next target. She'd been talking to a lawyer, trying to claim half of it. I contacted my own lawyer that night, explained everything, and asked for advice. It was clear she was planning to sell the house secretly, probably to fund her new life with Mark somewhere far away. I couldn't let that happen. The house was my family's legacy, the only thing left of the life I'd built over 2 decades. The lawyer told me I had a strong case to prevent her from selling the house without my consent. She couldn't just walk in and sign papers to transfer ownership, especially with the legal documents I had. But I needed to act quick. I filed a temporary restraining order to stop her from selling or refinancing the house. That was the first step, but I knew it wasn't enough. She was clever and I had to be smarter. In the days that followed, I started digging into her finances even more. I found out she'd been secretly funneling money into a new account, one I didn't even know existed. She was planning to run away with the cash, and I was furious. I also contacted the lawyer who was helping her, and I learned she'd been making arrangements to sell the house through a shady real estate agent. I knew I had to expose her plans publicly, but I was also worried she'd try to act even more reckless. Meanwhile, Lisa was getting bitchier, more dismissive, and increasingly aggressive. She accused me of trying to control her, called me insecure and jealous, and insisted she was entitled to half the house because she contributed to it. She made up stories about how I'd been neglecting her, how she was just trying to find happiness, and that I was overreacting. But I saw through her tears and her lies. I wasn't about to let her manipulate me anymore. One night, I caught her sneaking around the house with a folder full of papers. When I asked her what she was doing, she snapped at me, saying she was just organizing her legal stuff. But I knew better. It was part of her plan to finalize the sale. I confronted her again, told her I had already stopped her from selling the house temporarily, and that I was going to make sure she couldn't do it at all. I also warned her that, if she tried to run away with the money or the house, I'd make sure she paid dearly through the courts, through everything. That's when she finally lost her temper. She screamed at me, called me a controlling pig, and accused me of ruining her life. I stayed calm, but inside I was boiling. I knew I had to stay one step ahead of her. I had to protect what was mine, and I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. The betrayal, the lies, the theft, they all hit hard, but I was determined not to be the fool anymore. I also started recording her when she wasn't looking, her angry outbursts, her plans, her lies. I wanted concrete proof, not just my suspicions. I knew this was going to get ugly, and I had to be prepared. Every step I took was calculated. I wasn't about to let her destroy my life and walk away with everything I had built. The worst part, I kept asking myself how she could do this to us, our family, our kids. How she could betray me, steal from me, lie so effortlessly. It felt like I was living in some nightmare I couldn't wake up from. But I also knew that I had to be strong for myself and for our children. I couldn't let her win, not this way. Not after everything we'd been through. I just hoped that somehow I'd find a way to fix this mess before it was too late. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I stayed up nights reading about legal protections, trying to understand every loophole she might try to exploit. I knew she was clever, manipulative even, and I couldn't afford to let her slip away with the house or the money. Every moment was tense. Every conversation with her was a calculated battle. She kept insisting she was the victim, saying I was paranoid, controlling, and that I didn't appreciate her. But I saw through her act now. She was a bitchy, selfish woman who thought she could just lie her way out of everything. I kept pushing for the legal injunction, going over every detail with my lawyer. We filed for a court order to freeze any sale of the house and to investigate the transfers from our joint account. Meanwhile, I kept gathering evidence, more texts, more bank statements, even recording her when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I wanted her to realize I wasn't some fool she could manipulate anymore. One day I caught her in the act. I walked into the living room, and there she was on her phone with a real estate agent on speakerphone. She was negotiating to sell the house, my house. Her bitchy smirk told me she thought she was untouchable. I immediately snapped a picture of the screen, and I knew I had her cornered. I told her I had already filed the legal papers, and she froze. Her face went pale, then red with rage. She tried to deny it, but I had the proof. That's when she flipped the switch, going full bitch mode. She yelled at me, called me a controlling bastard, and accused me of ruining her life. She said I was just jealous and insecure, that she deserved a better life than the one I'd given her. I told her she was a liar, a thief, and a cheat, because that's exactly what she was. I told her she wasn't going to sell the house, not while I had a say in it, and that I'd take her to court if I had to. She didn't take it well. She stormed out of the house, screaming that I was ruining everything, that she'd fight for her rights, and that I'd regret messing with her. I knew she was desperate now, and that made her dangerous. I also knew I had to keep my guard up. She'd try to come back with some new scheme, some new lie to get what she wanted. I contacted the real estate agent she'd been talking to, who, of course, was surprised I was involved. I made it clear that any sale of the house was on hold until further notice, and I provided the legal documents to back me up. I also told the agent that I'd be filing a restraining order if she tried to push through with any deal. The agent seemed hesitant, probably realizing this wasn't a simple transaction anymore. Good. I wanted her to understand she was messing with a guy who was not going to roll over. Meanwhile, I kept an eye on her bank accounts. I found even more transfers, small amounts, but enough to show she was planning to run away with the cash. I also discovered she'd been talking to a lawyer who was helping her draft some kind of legal claim to half the house. That's when I realized she was trying to do a sneaky quick sale, maybe to get out before I could stop her. I was furious. How could she be so manipulative, so selfish? I started preparing for the worst. I called my lawyer again, asked about the possibility of a full legal separation and what steps I needed to take to protect my assets. We discussed the possibility of her being fraudulent or dishonest in the sale, and how to prove her intentions if she tried to go through with it anyway. I also made sure to document every move she made, every call, every text, every new transfer. I wanted everything on record. If it came to court, I needed to show she was actively trying to steal from me and our family. The emotional toll was intense. I felt betrayed, angry, and helpless. At the same time, I was determined. I couldn't let her destroy what I'd built. All those years of hard work, the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, she was trying to take it all away in a matter of weeks. I kept asking myself how she could be so bitchy, so relentless, in her pursuit of her own happiness at my expense. That woman I married, the woman I thought loved me, was now just a stranger who wanted everything I had. In the midst of all this chaos, I also had to keep the kids in mind. I didn't want them to suffer because of her schemes. I kept their routines as normal as possible, but I knew I had to have a serious talk with them soon. I didn't want them growing up thinking their mother was a liar and a thief. I wanted to protect them from the worst of this mess, but I also knew I had to be honest with them eventually. The most shocking part, she kept insisting she was the victim, that I was the one controlling her, that I was paranoid, that she deserved a better life than the one I'd given her. I could see the bitchy attitude underneath her tears. She was furious, desperate, and willing to do whatever it took to get her way. And I was just trying to hold everything together, knowing full well that the storm wasn't over yet. The situation was spiraling faster than I could keep up with. Every day brought some new twist, some new lie from her, some new scheme to try to outmaneuver me. I'd spent hours with my lawyer planning every possible move. But even with all that preparation, I didn't realize how far she was willing to go until she crossed a line I never thought she would. One morning, I woke up to find a notice slipped under the door, an official-looking document claiming she had filed for legal separation and demanding that I vacate the house within 30 days. I was stunned. My stomach sank. That was her move to try and push me out, to get me to give up and let her sell the house without a fight. I knew she was trying to push me into a corner, to make me look like the bad guy, but I wasn't going down that easily. I immediately contacted my lawyer, who confirmed that the filing was a strategic move, but that it didn't change the fact that we had legal protections in place. We quickly filed for an emergency injunction to prevent her from selling or transferring ownership of the house. It was a tense few days, waiting for the court to hear our case. Meanwhile, she was out there trying to convince other people that I was the villain, that I'd been abusive and controlling, and that she had no choice but to run away and start fresh. Her bitchy attitude was on full display during these days. She called me every name under the sun, controlling, insecure, jealous, and accused me of trying to keep her from living her life. She even went so far as to say I was trying to ruin her reputation because I was jealous of her new life. That was laughable. I knew she was just trying to spin her lies, but it still hurt. I'd always tried to be a good husband, and now I was the villain in her eyes because I dared to stop her from selling the house and stealing more money. The court hearing was a nightmare. She showed up with her lawyer, looking bitchy and smug, trying to sway the judge with her tears and her fake sob stories. I laid out all the evidence I had, proof of her affair, the stolen money, her plans to sell the house, her attempts to transfer ownership. I explained how she'd been planning this for months and how her actions were putting everything at risk. The judge listened carefully and after a tense hour issued a temporary restraining order that barred her from selling, refinancing, or transferring the house until the case could be fully reviewed. That was a small victory, but I knew she wasn't going to give up. I could see her bitchy smirk behind her tears, like she was already planning her next move. I stayed vigilant, knowing she'd try to find a way around the court order. I also kept a close eye on her financial activity, making sure she couldn't secretly move any more money or assets. In the meantime, I decided I had to confront her directly again. I called her to meet at the house, expecting another fight but prepared for anything. When she arrived, she tried her usual bitchy attitude, dismissing my concerns, trying to minimize her actions, acting like she was the victim. But I wasn't having it anymore. I told her I knew every lie, every scheme, and every betrayal. I told her I was done playing her game. If she wanted to fight for the house, she'd have to do it legally, not through sneaky deals and manipulations. She snapped. Her bitchy, condescending tone turned into a full-blown bitch fit. She yelled that I was trying to control her, that she deserved a better life, and that I was just a jealous, insecure man who couldn't handle her independence. Her tears turned to sneers and her face twisted with fury. I stayed calm, but inside I was seething. I told her she was a liar and a thief, and that I was going to make sure she paid for everything she'd done. That day I also made arrangements to get a forensic accountant involved. I wanted to track every penny she'd stolen or transferred illegally. I knew she'd try to hide more money, to move it offshore or into fake accounts. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I also started preparing a detailed timeline of everything: her affair, the money theft, her plans to sell the house, to use as evidence in court. Honestly, I felt exhausted. Betrayal was a deep, raw wound, and I kept questioning how someone I loved could turn into this manipulative, bitchy thief. I kept asking myself how I didn't see the signs earlier, how I missed the subtle shifts, the little lies. I thought I knew her, but I was learning that she was capable of so much more than I ever imagined. It was like waking up from a nightmare I couldn't escape. Despite all the chaos, I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to let her walk away with the house or the money. I had to protect what was mine: my home, my family, my dignity. I was tired of her lies, her manipulations, her bitchy attitude, and her betrayal. I was ready to fight, however long it took. Because at the end of the day, I deserved better than a wife who would do all this to me, and I was determined not to let her ruin everything I'd worked so hard for. The weeks that followed were the most stressful of my life. Every day felt like walking a tightrope. One wrong move, and I feared she'd find a way to slip past me. I kept the legal protections tight, constantly updating my lawyer on her every move. Meanwhile, she was still bitchy and manipulative, trying to spin her stories to anyone who would listen. She told mutual friends I was controlling, jealous, and just paranoid. She painted herself as the victim, the wronged wife pushed into a corner, desperate to escape. The thing is, I knew her better now. I saw through all that. I knew she was just trying to save her own ass, even if it meant destroying me. One night, I caught her red-handed again. I was reviewing some bank statements and noticed a suspicious transfer. Another $50, $0 moved into a secret account she'd opened. I immediately confronted her the next morning. Her bitchy smirk was back and she tried to deny everything, claiming she was just trying to get ahead and cover her bases. But I had the proof. I showed her the statement and her face twisted with rage. She yelled at me, calling me paranoid and accusing me of invading her privacy. That was her usual tactic: lie, deny, attack. I told her she was done playing her games. I said I'd already involved a forensic accountant, and I was going to make sure every penny she stole was recovered. I also told her I was going to take her to court for full financial disclosure and to settle who gets what. She responded with more bitchy tears, trying to guilt-trip me, saying I was ruining her life, that she only wanted a fresh start. I knew that was bullshit. She wanted the house, the money, and her freedom, and she was willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate to get it. The legal battle was heating up. We had court dates scheduled, and I was preparing my case. I worked with my lawyer to gather every piece of evidence: texts, bank records, witness statements. I also hired a private investigator to dig into her financial activities and her contacts. I wanted to make sure she wasn't hiding anything else, that she wasn't planning some last-minute scheme to escape with even more of my assets. Meanwhile, she continued her bitchy attitude, trying to turn the kids against me. She told them I was controlling and that I didn't love them, all to paint herself as the victim. It hurt to see her doing that, but I knew I had to stay strong. I kept their routines normal, kept talking to them about what was happening, and reassured them that I was doing everything I could to protect our family. I didn't want them to grow up thinking their mother was a liar and a thief, but I also knew I had to be honest with them in an age-appropriate way. One day, I found out she'd been trying to secretly sell the house through a shady real estate agent, bypassing the legal process entirely. I was furious. I immediately contacted my lawyer, who filed an emergency motion to halt any sale. I also had the court issue a more permanent injunction that prevented her from selling, transferring, or refinancing the property. It was a relief to know I had some control, but I also knew she'd keep trying to find a way around it. Her bitchy attitude grew even more intense as she realized she wasn't getting her way. She accused me of controlling her life, of trying to ruin her, and of jealousy. She said I was just insecure because I knew she was cheating and stealing. Her tears were fake, her anger real. I stayed calm, but inside I was boiling. I knew she was desperate, and that meant she was dangerous. I also started documenting her every move, taking photos, recording her calls, saving every message. I wanted irrefutable proof of her schemes so I could use it in court. I knew this wasn't over yet. She was still trying to manipulate the situation, and I had to be ready for whatever she threw at me next. In the middle of all this chaos, I realized I was losing my sense of control. I trusted her for so long, and now I saw her for what she truly was, a manipulative, bitchy woman who'd stop at nothing to get her way. I felt betrayed, angry, and exhausted, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I had to stay strong to fight for what was rightfully mine: the house, the money, my reputation, my integrity. And I was starting to see that the biggest fight wasn't just about the house or the cash. It was about reclaiming my life from someone who had betrayed everything we had built together. I knew she'd never admit she was wrong, never take responsibility, but I was determined to hold my ground. I wasn't going to let her destroy me or my family. Not now, not ever. The final stretch was the most draining but also the most revealing. After everything, the lies, the theft, her manipulations, I finally saw how deep her bitchy, selfish streak ran. The court hearings dragged on, but I had everything laid out: proof of her affair, the stolen money, her clandestine attempts to sell the house, and her lies to everyone around us. I knew she was trying to spin the story, but I had the facts. And in the end, facts don't lie. When the judge finally ruled, it was a relief. She was ordered to cease all attempts to sell or transfer the house. The court also mandated a full financial disclosure from her, and I was awarded a temporary settlement to cover legal fees and some of the expenses I'd incurred fighting her. It wasn't over yet, but it was a significant blow to her plans. Her bitchy attitude turned into a defeated glare, and I could see she knew she'd lost control. That day, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. The house was safe for now. My assets were protected, but the emotional scars lingered. I looked at her, sitting across from me in court, and realized how much I'd been blinded. I'd trusted her, loved her, and built a life with her, only for her to turn into someone so manipulative and selfish. The betrayal cut deep, but I also felt a strange sense of empowerment. I'd fought for what was mine, and I'd won, at least for now. In the weeks that followed, I started the process of rebuilding. I filed for divorce, knowing that the damage was too great to repair. I also took steps to heal emotionally: therapy, talking to friends, focusing on my kids. They deserved stability, and I owed it to myself to move forward. I realized how much I'd lost, but also how much I could still gain: peace, honesty, and a fresh start. Looking back, I see that her bitchy, manipulative attitude was just a mask for her own insecurities and greed. She thought she could cheat, steal, and manipulate her way out of everything. But I learned that honesty and integrity still matter. That standing up for yourself, even against someone you loved, is the only way to truly reclaim your life. My advice: don't ignore the red flags. Trust your instincts and don't be afraid to fight for what's rightfully yours. People can surprise you, sometimes in the worst ways. But in the end, what matters most is staying true to yourself, protecting your family, and not letting the betrayal define you. Because no matter how bitchy or manipulative someone gets, your dignity and integrity are worth more than any house or dollar amount. I learned that the hard way, but I'm finally starting to heal. And that's all I can ask for.